Hello and welcome to the Wonkette Weekend Live Chat. I am Rob Panacchia, and this is the lovely and talented Stephen Robinson. Um, yes, I'm sitting in the dark.
How
It's
how
very
are you,
dark.
Robin?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm well. Before we started recording, because we are recording because I'm doing a family thing Sunday. But I was telling Robin how my son and wife are watching Home Alone, and I can't stand that movie because I resent the child for ruining his family's Paris vacation. I would have just left him there to let Joe Pesci have and Daniel Stern have their way with him and enjoy my croissants, or at least just call a neighbor and have the
I mean,
neighbor look after
I'm
the
just
kid
gonna
for a
say,
while.
that seemed like a horrible family vacation anyway. Like, oh, here's literally all of our relatives going to Paris. And like,
Paris,
yeah.
Paris, it's lovely, and I think they were flying first
Yeah,
class.
but like when we were really little, when our parents went to Europe, we stayed with our nana. I don't think I went to Europe until I was like 11 or something. I was like no,
um,
even maybe because like no, my parents were not going to be taking us on any like major transatlantic flights. I was apparently a pain in the ass on like regular domestic flights. So
it was it. Well, I every time I watch that movie, aside from getting angry at that, I get annoyed that how did they possibly sleep through their alarms? And then when I was about to post of annoying, then I get a notification from a good friend of mine who shall remain nameless, a good friend of mine, uh, a lovely friend of mine who slept through her alarm. Uh,
it's not that I slept through my alarm. It's that my alarm didn't go off because my power went out.
because you
Like,
wish that your family had vanished.
like,
Like, isn't that what happened? There's a magic element to
well,
Home Alone, right? Because
here's
she
the thing.
says, "Don't wish that," and then the power. There's like something blows and the power goes out.
Yeah,
And
but also like I normally have like an internal alarm clock to some degree, but not like, but it's been completely thrown off by COVID because I've just like, I mean, I'm not COVIDy anymore, but I've been like I told you, I've been super tired for the past couple of weeks to the point where like I slept until 12 p.m. yesterday. Like I It was crazy. I don't normally sleep that much even.
oh yeah. Also, you do not have children, and as a parent,
Yes.
whenever I see that movie now, as a parent, I'm like, what? You're in a house of children. They let you sleep till 8 a.m. Like you're lucky to get to 6 or 7. Kids will, especially if it's not a school day, they get up earlier to torture you. Um, but but enough about holiday classics. It is as recording the big news of what should have been the big news today of the
Yes.
week should have been Raphael Warnock's triumphant victory over in the Georgia runoffs over Herschel Walker. That should have been the big news. But there's a certain attention. I won't use a very gendered, horrible term there, but there's a certain attention person who demanded to be have the focus on them, and of course had to reveal this huge thing that she had switched parties. So not switched parties, but it's no longer a Democrat or Republican. She's putting the I and independent.
Honestly, with her, I truly like, and again, I told you, I don't think that people do things for attention to the degree that everyone else thinks everyone does everything for attention. And I don't even I don't know. I don't think it was, I think she's just like, I think she's a person who has her head up her own ass. I do think, like, I
uh,
don't think that she thinks enough, like, to be I don't think there's enough of a thought process there where she's like, oh, hmm, I feel like people aren't paying attention enough to me. I'm gonna go announce this thing. I think that she was like, oh, they think that they're gonna be like, oh, Democrats have control of the Senate, and everyone was all like, oh, Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin aren't gonna have as much power, and she was like, oh, really, bitch?
yeah, well, she's
Like, I think it was more like that,
it's much more calculated, I'm sure. I mean, I think she's very
less
much
calculated. I think it's
uh,
less calculated.
sort of as so you just see her as a chaos agent,
Yes.
going based on her feelings. It's very hard for my Vulcan mind to wrap itself around that. But I think what's interesting, because when she was at the Mitch McConnell Love Fest, she a while back, she was mentioning how it was likely that Democrats were going to lose control of the Senate, which did not happen. They actually
Yeah.
expanded. There was no red wave. So there isn't a point of view that her sense was, and there's too many theories. We're just going to speculate, obviously, because we can't getting inside her head is like when they put, trying to get inside the Joker's brain when it's like all crazy and shifty and a funhouse mirror thing. So, but the argument was that she was anticipating prior to this. So let's say at this point, it would be a complete wipeout. There would have been this red wave, a rout. Kelly, Cortez Masto, Warnock were all actually favored to lose by certain pundits and pollsters said they were likely to lose. Fetterman was likely to lose. Republicans were going to have like 54 seats or something, and the House would have been a 60-seat loss. It was going to be a clear repudiation of Democrats. And then she could step forward as Miss Bipartisanship and say, I want no part of that sinking ship. I am an independent. And of course, that didn't happen, but she kind of already made the t-shirts, I guess, and ordered the mugs. So had to kind of go through with it. Who knows? Again, as you said, it's hard to have any
honestly, I think she's chaotic evil. Like, that's not
yes. I think that's certainly true. She's, I will see online when people talk about how she wants to be a Republican where she's not. Her voting record is not very right wing. It is sort of like she imagined, because she's in this sort of MSNBC bubble, right? So she imagines that there's a demand and market for Murkowski or even McConnell, like establishment Republicans, and there isn't, right? Like they keep getting wet. So it's very interesting because I was writing about Ronna McDaniel getting pushed back because she's a big loser at the Republican National Committee. And one of the people who wants to replace her was on Tucker Carlson and talking about we need to move away from the Chamber of Commerce, neoliberal, like all this sort of stuff, Republicans. And what she's describing is Sinema. Like Sinema has no home. Like Sinema is someone who's like, I'm a cop who wants to join the mob, but I want to join the family that's getting whacked and losing. Like, well, like that, and there is no contingent for what you want. Like, let me just raise taxes or everything. Like even Manchin makes a far more sense as a Southern blue dog. You might not like him, but there's like a history of guys like that. And it's not, but
like there's really not a big call for what Sinema is. Like the Republicans want more fascism, and these days really do care less of, like, at least like the base, like they care less about business interests than they used to. And she's all like, yay, business interests.
And this might sound as silly as corporate communism, that term that Marjorie Taylor Greene invented, but there is almost sort of amongst Republicans a kind of collectivism amongst the fascism of like we are a team, and she does not want to be like, and that repels the people. Like when Trump was all about himself, but it was like we together, and MAGA, we together.
Well, they sort of enjoyed, the aspect of that they enjoyed, the sort of unifying. Sorry, there's sort of like a cult, like I think the whole like blah blah, it's a cult thing, but there's sort of like a cult like unifying factor in when someone keeps switching what they believe in, and then everyone just goes along with that, like or just like suddenly comes out with like, oh, I believe this thing that's totally contrary to like what we've been saying all along, and then everyone's like, yes, now we believe that, and we have always believed that. And there's a certain like that's like true unity on some level. Like it makes people feel like they are part of a community. Like, oh, when Trump says something, it's automatically true and has been true forever.
Oh yeah, and early on, when everyone hated Ted Cruz, like amongst Republicans, I mean, Democrats hated him for good reasons, but I
Mhm.
mean, and even among Democrats, it wasn't just about the politics. About he's a jerk. So the Senate has like rules and a club aspect
Yeah.
that's a little bit annoying, but the clubbiness was that he was breaking the country club rules. It was kind of like we are on opposite sides. There's still sort of a country club rule here, and
Yeah.
what you say and
But
what you
not in the way
do.
that he had like the same appeal to other people that Trump had.
No, no. I mean, Trump was sort of, I'm doing as the outsider. Cruz just came out as a jerk. And I think my what I was getting at there is like cinema did the same thing, sort of like trying to follow the Cruz path to how to win friends and influence people seems not particularly wise, but she was doing that. I mean, there was, you know, again, Democrats were talking about how they had issues with Joe Manchin, but he would be straight with them. He would negotiate with them, which is sort of you negotiate with your party and your colleagues, but he was a conservative member of it. He could be a prima donna, but he was about the party. Whereas Cinema was like, I won't talk to Schumer. I won't talk to Pelosi. And she would even use those terms publicly. She was to say, I only negotiate with the White House, which is kind of a jerky thing. It's not that's not, it's just being a jerk, right? It's kind of just like no one
Yeah.
likes that person. If you've worked in
There's
any
no real
workplace, no one
Kirsten
likes
Cinema fan base.
no, because she's a
Let's
jerk.
face
She doesn't like her. She doesn't. She has no respect for her constituents. She has no respect. So what she's done is avoid having to face primary voters. So what she's put out there is like, and it's interesting. I mean, I get. This is not an anti-democratic statement. I know I get
yeah.
pushed back for this. I'm just saying I think you could have seen this coming a while away. I would see a lot of Democrats, myself, I would write this of like, she's so unpopular, she will never win a Democratic primary. Now, you would think the big kind of thing you would reveal in there is that, oh, that means she will try to avoid a primary and just run as an independent and say, take me or get nothing, which is what
Yeah.
she's done. It's like, Arizona has sore loser laws. So if she had run in a primary and lost, she couldn't have run as an independent. So now she can just spend the next couple of years. I'm an independent. I'm going to run for reelection. Pretty much all of Biden's legislative achievements go through her. And, you know, she's going to say, Democrats, suck it up and be with me or lose this seat because you're not going to win in a three-way race. This isn't Oregon where Democrats have a
Oh
registration
no, I think
advantage.
we can still. I think they'll destroy her in a three-way race. Honestly,
Well, she won't. I
um,
mean, if well, the idea is that Democrats have to stand down. What she wants is that Democrats will stand down and support her. If they run, if you look at the exit polling, Hobbs, who narrowly beat Lake, Kelly beat the creepy sex doll by significantly more, because generally speaking, crazy soft focus lady is more appealing politically than creepy sex doll Victorian child ghost that was Blake Masters. Um and but you know Hobbs and Kelly maxed out Democrats, and Lake and Masters mostly maxed out Republicans. There were a few, not many, that voted for the Democratic nominee, and then
but no, she's going
Hobbs
to have
or
to be
whatever
entirely
went all the
self-funded, right?
depends. I mean, she couldn't get money from any locations. I think some Democrats might support her if they believe that she's the only chance. Because again, if she in a three-way race, if she diminishes the Democrats' margins amongst independents, then it's kind of over because Republicans have an advantage registration-wise. It's like only 26% of the electorate is Democratic, about 40, actually 36 or so percent is Republican, and the rest is independent. So she cuts into that margin by 2 or 3 points. That's the ball game, and so you get
Mm,
and it's just interesting because people are like, well, there's no way a strong Democrat can beat her, and these are often the same people who insist that Jill Stein, who I think was a complete flake, Jill Stein was able to somehow defeat Hillary Clinton. Both Jill Stein and Susan Sarandon were able to defeat
yeah.
Hillary Clinton in the Rust Belt. So it's like, well, you do used to believe in spoiler candidates, quote unquote. So clearly cinema could be one to the detriment of your real Democrat. I don't know. I don't know what they will do. It is in Oregon. The advantage was that Betsy Johnson, aside from the Democratic um, registration advantage, Betsy Johnson was not the literal incumbent governor. So you could
Yeah.
have Obama and Biden supporting the Democrat without also the kind of uncomfortable situation of Biden being like, here's all the great stuff I did in, and for Arizona that cinema helped
At the
do, but
same
I hate
time,
her.
cinema doesn't really have that though, does she? Like,
I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. All this week, when I was saying I had posted something about cinema being obnoxious, and I got a gentleman in my feed who, and it's one of those things where it inevitably turned into Bernie Sanders sucks. But it started with, well, she's a
it's an
reliable.
automatic block for me. Like, no, I can't. It's just boring at this point. Like, I can't
Well,
do it.
it just comes out of no. It is interesting because, um, and I'll get back to my other point. But what's interesting was because I don't loathe Bernie Sanders. I was never a big support. I would be critical of stuff. I mean, I am critical of things that people do, and what would happen is I would write something critical about him or he said or whatever. And like I'd get a new follower or I get a new thing and be fine. And then it's almost like, hey,
They
so
multiplied. No.
hey, so you think that Bernie Sanders is the devil, right? It's like, no, not really. Like it would be this weird thing of like,
No,
no,
they
I
do
just
it to me
disagree with this
too.
one
They do
thing.
it to me too. I will
I
see
disagree with
people.
this one thing.
I get so many people in my mentions like that follow me with like, I block all Bernie Sanders fans. And I'm like, well, I'm not following you. You're following me. I don't know what to tell you about this or how to help you. Like, you know, and they'll be like, don't you like it's not as bad as it used to be where it was like, this has to be literally every conversation. Like you'd be like, oh, it's nice out today. And it'd be like, unlike Bernie Sanders, who is terrible. Hmm? And I said, this is so boring. I don't like this. Like
Yeah, it's just like he's an old man. Like, can we just let? But it was just sort of um it began with the idea of like, well, he's not a team. She's the real team player. Again, this is a
yeah,
guy just this week. Well, Cinema's the real team. She's been there for us. All these important votes and all of the judges and whatever. I was like, so is Sanders, but fine. And we can rely on her. It's like, okay, well, that's how do you run against that? You've just spent the past you're the centrists or the reliable Dems who spent all this time trying to convince me that cinema's the best we can do, and now she drops this because she's chaotic, and now you're stuck with like this is the same person. It's like, okay, well now we're gonna put a real Dem in. It's like, based on what you just said that she's great and reliable, and here's all the stuff like infrastructure. She was there for us, the first Black Supreme Court justice. So like you're just gonna hit. You don't have a plan to hit her on now, other than you're really pissed that she betrayed you, which you could have predicted a long
yeah,
time ago. Um, and as I said, no one has ever, despite all the much espoused horseshoe theory, no one was ever afraid that Bernie Sanders as an independent was going to be like, hey, Mitch McConnell want to run,
yeah.
you know, and as annoying as he is, no one ever believed that that was what he was going to do. And but cinema, like this morning, as you noticed, like whatever that came up, it was like, oh my god, does that mean Mitch's in charge or whatever? It's like, okay, well, that should prove to you no one thinks that AOC is going to help, Marjorie Green become Speaker of the House or something. No one's
Mhm.
secretly fearing that. So as much as you hate these progressives, there is no horseshoe. They're not going to align themselves
Yeah.
with these bad
The
guys.
centrist is the one who went over. Like
They generally are the ones
the
you
good
believe.
centrist who was like, I can understand these people, except not really. Because I think they're all still like super for rich people when that's not like no, clearly their priority is hating drag queens right now. Like that's
Well, yeah, it's like, uh can you like we're gonna go lower. What if we lower taxes for rich people even more? It's like, no,
like the
we
thing
want
they
to
are
really
most
hurt.
hold on. Actually, the things that they are most mad at are women with blue hair.
Yeah.
Like and gay people, bisexual people, trans people, etc. And she is a trans. Oh, and they want a Christian nationalist state or country or whatever. So she's not a Christian. She occasionally has wears blue wigs,
No.
and
Yeah.
she's bisexual.
She has no.
She's literally everything that they despise right now, and
Well, she
thinks that she
also
was
believes in
on
nothing.
some.
But she believes in nothing. So she's not like,
Yeah.
again, Murkowski, who would have lost without ranked choice voting, mind you. She would have lost. Uh,
Yeah.
but she wants to be Murkowski or Collins, who are just vanishing breed. It's like there aren't that many of them. And she likes Romney. There aren't that many of these kind of Republicans. And she,
And they're not liked by other Republicans. There
no,
isn't
yeah.
this silent majority that's like, oh man, it's really great, is like being socially liberal and fiscally
Oh, yeah.
conservative. That doesn't exist anymore at all.
Like Tulsi got the Fox News deal by going all in on, like, she didn't really overtly change any of the other stuff about her domestic policy issues. All they want to hear from her is groomers.
Yeah. Trans people are bad. That's all they want right now.
Democrats are the real racists, that type of stuff, and to be really angry about it. And Sinema's sort of like, I don't believe anything really, and I mean, it's sort of how she refused to campaign for Democrats. And going back to what I was saying about Ted Cruz, as awful as he is, he was a guy we made fun of him trying to prop up Herschel Walker, but he got on the plane, flew to Georgia, and that's being part of the team, right? It's like, look, we've got to get these guys across the finish line. And she just she just thinks it's all about me, which is not actually going to appeal to anyone. But I'm of the opinion that now she's kind of the Democrats' only hope of holding that seat and not having it be
I don't know.
So.
I think it'd be easier, honestly, to cancel her out. Especially if she doesn't have that much support. I don't think that she is that popular. So
no,
I don't.
She's not. It's just, as I said, she could just if she just manages, she's an incumbent senator. So even if she just managed 6% of the vote, which I think would be low given she's an incumbent senator, she just got 6% of the vote in a three-way race. She is more likely to take it away from the voters that a Democrat would need to win over, because in Arizona, you still need some McCain Republicans or independents. If she just gets 6% of that, when you look at, Hobbs won by less than a percentage point. So it's not a lot of room for error there. So it will be interesting to see how Democrats approach this as we get closer to the election, and whether they're kind of like, are we going to clear the field for this incumbent who kind of still caucuses with us, or are we going to nominate our own person, because she won't participate in a primary, nominate our own person and risk a three-way race. It'll be interesting this one way or the other what they wind up doing. But that is not surprising that Kristen Sinema sucks. She's just a terrible person. One person was tweeting that it's because she was part of the Green Party and they can't be trusted and they're all Manchurian candidates. And I'm just like, what?
Hello. When I was 19 years old, I was the chair of fundraising for our county's Green Party. And then after that, I was an anarchist. So the fact that I'm, so.
But and they said that as well. Anarchist. She's a chaos agent. So that's
no,
what
she's not an anarchist. I'm an anarchist. Anarchism is an actual political philosophy. It's not just anarchy in the UK, but I'm not gonna get into that.
It's just this interesting thing of just she is one specific self-interested person who sold out everything she's believed for her own whatever, but that doesn't mean that every Green Party person is that way, or any progressive is that way. It was just
and no,
I don't get, how do you make, that's a huge leap.
Really, this is the thing. They want so badly for it to be true because they like this idea that they actually subscribe to the same idea that cinema does. That
Mhm.
there is this big, so that there's wacky, kooky progressives and, Nazis. And then in the middle, there's everyone else. And they just want to like not be divided and all get along and have like fairly boring political opinions and never change anything ever. And that is, not actually like a real thing so much anymore. Like that's a small amount of people who are in that. Like, I think really at this point you have like the progressive left, the not so whatever, the blue wave people, the whatever blue the blue wave in their handles, like the blue, whatever you
Blue
call them, the blue
MAGA.
MAGA people. And then on the right, you have the super crazy far right people, and then like five Liz Cheneys. Like that's about it. Like, and then there's people who just like don't give a fuck about politics at all. Like that's who is there. And most of those people are actually from, like, in my experience, the people that I have met like that, unfortunately for us, have fairly left-wing political ideas. They just are like, it can't happen anyway, so I don't care. Like,
No. Yeah, there's a theme of which you mentioned Liz Cheney. So, one of my favorite Twitter games, there will be someone with those blue wave, blue waves, THEE in their titles, and it'll
yeah.
be like, I
Which
don't
I
always.
thought had something to do with this band that I like, but it does not.
No, it is much more depressing. So they'll say, I don't always agree. I don't agree if anything, mostly Liz Cheney's politics or whatever, but she's a true patriot. She understands that Trump is terrible and whatever. And it's like, okay. And then I go into their feed and it'll be like all this stuff about how AOC is the worst person ever.
Yeah.
And I'm just, well, okay. Well, if democracy is at stake and you're just praising Liz Cheney, wouldn't you also be like, even though I don't always agree with
Yeah, no, but
AOC,
that's not how it really works.
she also, because she was one of the first, like when Liz Cheney was voting for Trump twice, AOC was like, this guy's a racist. But I think this idea of like wanting to give Republicans credit for stuff, even if a progressive who you otherwise hate was there saying it a week, months, or years earlier, it means more if like, hey, look, this Republican says maybe that the Iraq war is a bad idea. It's like, but progressives were saying that for a while. Like, no, but now maybe it means
Now
something.
it counts. Like,
So speaking of social media, there was this whole thing with Twitter, with the Twitter files. Have you been following that with like?
oh yeah. Well, I mean, it has not worked out well. Sir Elton John is leaving Twitter, which is sad
That's
for
it.
all of us.
It's over. It's done. Twitter's over.
Fuck it. No, I love Elton John. Yeah, I'm weird. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. I do. I like Elton John. So sue me. I think he
Why,
is.
but why
Yeah.
wouldn't you? Why are you
No, I
even
don't
at
know.
all
I don't know if like
defensive?
people are.
Elton John is wonderful. Like, knew you were waiting for me. That was a
I don't
different
know.
song.
I was just like, is that dorky? I don't know. But no, I like Elton John. And he was like, I'm leaving Twitter because of all the misinformation. And Elon Musk was like, oh no, wait, stop. What misinformation is it that you don't like? We're confused. I like your music. And like,
I like what. Oh my god, you're writing about this, right? Like this will have been done already.
I think someone else might be.
because
So I'm not sure. But
because it
everyone was
is.
making like that,
He's trying to
using that
keep
AI
Elton John.
thing in the Slack chat to like write various like songs and romances about the two of them.
I don't know why this popped into my mind. Also, the song I was thinking of by Elton John was not "Knew You Were Waiting for Me." That's an Aretha Franklin, George Michael duet. I'm thinking of the
Yeah.
George Michael, Elton John duet of
Don't let the sun go down on me.
Down on Me, but me is involved. But anyway, the idea of Elon Musk tried to personally plead with
Yeah, Elton
Elton John to
John.
stay. It just, I don't know why. It reminded me of this absurd movie where the presidential election, came down to one swing state and one vote. And for whatever reason, like, it was Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner could still vote. Like, he still could vote. So maybe there was some sort of loophole. Like, maybe his vote got lost. They were like, we'll give you credit. Who are you going to vote for? So the president, played by Kelsey Grammer, and then whoever the other guy was, I've forgotten, visited him and made their appeal personally to him, and he would
I
decide.
would not vote for President Fraser. I'm sorry. I'd vote for
But
you, but I wouldn't vote for President Fraser,
thank you.
Stephen.
So I don't know. That's what I think of. He was like personally trying to keep these, because he understands. It's like, why, like, no one wants to go on a site. Like, he's talking about his free speech or whatever. You're turning it into 4chan with a bunch of
Yeah,
racists and Nazis who only enjoy it when they're mocking us.
yeah.
So, and you've lost all the celebrities who are going to go to a different site, and that site's going to do much better. Like, you are.
Because that's who people care about. They're not like, oh boy, what is some random racist in Iowa who is weirdly upset about drag queens? What do they think? I want to know what they think right now. And
No,
like,
no.
that's what he wants. Like, I think he's like, I want this to be, that's what they want. They're like, I don't understand why my views aren't as important as the views of celebrities or people who are, you know, well educated and paid to have expertise in certain things. Um, and that's sort of been the goal. So they actually want all the, like, his people, supporters actually want all of the celebrities to leave. But I think on some level, because he might have spoken to some advertisers, he might realize that, oh boy, the
Why would they advertise
advertisers
this
kind of
site?
want the celebrities to stay.
Revealing, you have this opportunity to interact with celebrities, which is cool. I mean, if you told um 15-year-old us that we could interact freely with Elton John and he might respond, who knows? There's a chance he could be like, "Hey, Robin, that's a cool thing." It's like that's like, wow,
Yeah,
wow, I love this service. Now, if you told 15-year-old me, "Hey, this is a service where you could try to talk to your friends about cool stuff, but then racists will get into your mentions and, like, and be misogynist and threaten to rape your friends." It's like, I don't like that
yeah,
service.
that
That
seems like a poor time.
I don't want to. I'm not into that, and so that's all the content moderation is. But they're obsessed with fairness. So Barry Weiss she's got this
It's not
nowhere
that they're
job of
obsessed with
going through,
fairness.
but it seems like, oh wow, you're picking on these people more. Well, because they're terrible. I don't know how to help. I don't know what
Yeah,
to say to you. You're the ones who's always talking about there's no such thing as equality of outcome, only equality of opportunity. But obviously, Republicans don't actually believe that. But it's just this sense of, I mean, the whole thing with
but like actual studies show that Twitter like promotes right-wing content more.
mhm.
And Twitter is like, and both Twitter and Facebook have that issue. And Twitter has even said, like, we're not sure why this is, it just happens. Um, the thing that she actually showed was no one do anything to the libs of TikTok account. Sorry, that did not. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. The libs of TikTok account, um, because for whatever reason they don't need to be like they shouldn't be subject to the rules of other accounts. And they were all like, look at how unfair this is to the libs of TikTok account that they have this exception from the rules of Twitter. So like,
I
but they
yeah.
all looked at it and they were like, oh wow, this is really unfair. They're really being targeted here. And her whole thing was about how the libs of TikTok account has been unfortunately targeted just because they, claimed that all LGBTQ people are child molesters. Like, oh, why is that?
Well, and it's not like, here's my fun content of myself or even my own opinions.
Yeah,
I'm hunting out people and setting them
Yeah.
out to be targets for violence, and it's repulsive. But it's interesting because there was the vote for the Marriage Protect Marriage Act, and there was the one lady whining and crying about it. And before
Oh,
there was a Supreme Court ruling, not ruling, but oral arguments about this website that didn't want to do business with it, proactively stating they did not want to do business, and they're trying to make it this whole this free speech thing. But I think implicit in that is obviously what they really want is a world where you can discriminate against queer people with no reperscussion. Because
yes,
generally
that is
speaking,
specifically what they want.
so
They
there
want to
was
be
a
able to be
world where,
assholes without any repercussions because they have enough power to make people afraid of them.
yeah. So
That's
if
the amount of social power they want and feel they
so,
deserve.
50, even 40 years ago, it was a place that was a restricted club that restricted Black people. Enough white people would have no problem with that to keep it in business. In fact, it would probably perhaps the fact that it does not kind of have Black people running around would be a good thing. Now we're kind of in a
That is
place.
how country clubs operated.
Exactly. Now we're kind of in a place where it's just like if you went on Yelp and it's like, I kind of like this, bed and breakfast, but oh wait, this Black person posted about the awful experience they had there, how they were treated like crap. Even as a white person who might not be treated like crap, if I went there, I don't want to go and patronize a place that discriminates against Black people. You would not want to
Yeah.
go. You would not want to use the website even for your. Neither of us would want to use it for our, you know, uh, opposite sex wedding or relationship. If it's like, okay, well, you are discriminating against people I care about and my friends, and I think that's kind of uncool, so I'm not going to support you. But they never walk that through. They kind of imagine a scenario where they're allowed to do that with no repercussion. And once that happens, what they always talk about the mob coming after them, or again, like not even just Martin Luther Green, like Tom Cotton has talked about corporations discriminating against conservatives. It's like, well, no one's discriminating against conservatives. It's just like, no, this is our business move. Our business practice is to be,
Not be horrible.
yeah, like that's just basic business. And I think they don't like that world is what it is, because it needed, the ability of the world to be terrible fell on a lot of people being kind of okay with that awfulness.
Yeah. Or like, I mean, just in general, frightened. Like the reason gay people didn't come out of the closet or trans people didn't come out of the closet was because they feared discrimination. They feared social rejection.
Oh yeah.
And and for those people, like, the conservatives, that's power. That's social power. These people they were not themselves. They did not love who they loved. They did not act on, this because we had all the power and they did not have any.
Oh yeah.
And we could make their lives hell. And they no longer have the power to make those people's lives hell. Although they're really trying.
There's so much lying about it as well when they talk about, and these are the arguments Supreme Court, and they're like, oh, obviously, we would not discriminate against interracial couples. Oh my God, you couldn't do that. I'm like, look, I'm old. I'm not that old. I remember when you guys hella discriminated against when you considered an interracial marriage just as vile as same-sex marriage, and you wrapped it up in the Bible and religious beliefs. That was like South Carolina.
Like
that was South Carolina. That was parts of Massachusetts, like 1980. Like it's not that long ago. It's not like some new version of the Bible came out in 1990. Like Jesus didn't come in 1990.
Jesus now cool with all that shit. Like,
yeah. Interracial marriage is good. Gay marriage still bad. Like, no, that didn't happen. So you're just now trying to claim and it's interesting. They always spin it as being like, it's so unfair. The left is so intolerant, and they've always been doing that. So,
why would you tolerate my intolerance?
Someone had revealed online, like from I think a Washington Post article, there was letters to the editor or complaints the lead up to before the Civil War, where enslavers were complaining about how intolerant abolitionists were, and how they judged them and made them feel bad.
Oh,
And
please send that to me.
it includes, oh my God, it includes this one woman, and she was just like, yes, the black, the black people on this plantation, I can tell they hate me and resent me for no other reason than I'm white and own slaves. Like, I'm just a lady. Like, Robin, I'm just
Going about owning people.
I'm just a lady minding my own business, owning
Owning
people,
people.
not paying them for the work they do.
And in
I,
fact, owning them.
I
I
separate them
mean,
from their families to sell their
like,
children,
their
and I
argument,
sense their resentment.
their arguments literally never change. Like, there's no change ever. Even economically, they were like, well, if you make us pay people, things are going to cost more. And to this day, we literally still, like,
Oh yeah.
slaves pick our cotton. Like, that's who picks most of the cotton is slaves.
Oh yeah. Well,
Still.
you can't afford, like, the question becomes, well, if we give people sick days on the
Yeah.
like, we give them sick days, oh no, it'd be the economic impact would be terrible, so they need to suck it up. And they
Like,
even used
it's like
to
literally like we need to be able to treat workers like shit, or things will be very inconvenient for you, people who are also workers.
well, I
So
remember when
there.
I lived in New
Like,
York during the transit strike of 2004 or 5. I don't remember the exact year now, but I think it was 2004 or 2005. And I remember being shocked, and I was like, this can't be right, but it was true that it was technically illegal to strike if your job is too important.
yeah,
So it's like, oh my God, well, we if they were allowed, if transit workers were allowed to strike, the city would come to a standstill. So we must remove their leverage.
yeah.
They're just too important. It's just so
But we can't
ridiculous.
pay them more. Because but
And
like
Bloomberg
every
would come
argument is just
out
that I
like,
read like
what a
y-
selfish, immoral strike. It's illegal and immoral. And it's like, well, just okay. Or you could just give them more money. It's never like, it's usually like something like a sick day. It's never just like Cadillacs for everyone. It's like just a sick. It's usually the demands are so relatively low
yeah,
that it's like, oh, how much more I gotta pay per subway ride or so. It's never. It's just so. But the idea that somehow, and I'm sure there were plenty of centrists on that deal. Like, okay, that seems reasonable. No one can strike if their job is too important.
yeah.
Like,
It's terrible. But like even like you read that like you go back, 100 years ago and look at the arguments against immigrants. It's the same thing today. You look at, Henry Ford's, bullshit with like jazz. It's the same thing as the Great Replacement stuff today. They
mhm.
never change their actual arguments. Um, Although one really fun crossover I thought was I read something a while back because I like to read a lot about immigrant stuff because I was covering that for a long time, like old timey immigrant stuff. And they were like one of the big concerns about Italian immigrants was that the men were a little too sexy and may have had large penises. They're not like it was like they're too swarthy and sexual and they will corrupt our women. And I'm like,
So, like,
yeah,
like the woman in The Godfather, she's like
yeah,
striping Sunny Corleone. She's like,
yeah.
played by
So it was like they
played by
liked
a
the
noted.
women because they were like these women are pretty, they stay in line for the most part, but the men we got to worry about them. So they were really like mainly just specifically worried about Italian men, and it's just like oh no, people are going to be sexually corrupted by someone who isn't me, I guess. Like it's just everything they come up with is some old shit. And I don't know if it's like that's just how their brains work or if they literally just like look back
Yeah,
in time and like read old books and are like, ooh, that random that man who said that women shouldn't ride bicycles because he'll jack up their faces, does he have a point?
Well, you're
Like,
also, I mean, they're always
bicycle
wrong.
face. Google it. Sorry.
They are always wrong, right,
Yeah.
Robin? So I just wish Democrats were often of like, you guys are always wrong. It was just, it was like one of the later episodes of the X-Files, which is unfair because again, there are no real aliens in the world. But Scully is kind of doing her Scully, and Mulder's like, "But I'm always right," and he sort of winks at the audience because, like, "Oh yeah, this is a world where, like, yes, there's many, many plausible alternatives, but the alien one is going to be right. This is the world, so let's listen to Mulder." But in this world, it's like, well, no, like none of thing
Except for
matters.
like the one times when it, like the few times when it gets religious, and then Mulder's the skeptic.
Yes.
Sorry.
Oh my
Twist.
god. Yes. And so it just, but they're always wrong. And every time you're
Yeah.
having the same of, and I think there is this intention of like when you talk about the strong Republican Party or the Republican Party ever believing anything that was correct. And it's like even around like all your economic policy consistently bankrupts the nation,
Yeah.
only benefits the wealthy, destroyed the middle class. Like everything you did is, and what's weird is like even amongst Democrats, we now have Democratic centrists who, and I think this is because of the boring Sanders hatred. Now the whole thing is like, well, FDR is a racist, so the entire Great Society is flawed. And it's like, okay, well, that was kind of our
Yes,
win,
it
right?
was flawed.
So
And
let's
guess
say
what? It only happened because he was afraid of socialists.
so
That
could
is
we
true.
just say like, well, it's but that was good. The racism's bad. Like, don't side the robber barons.
Yeah.
Just be
Like,
like, or to imply that the
there's
only
always
way
that
to
like
happen.
there are always those people though who are going to be like, I disagree with this one group, so the opposite group must be correct. Um and no, that's really not always true.
No, it isn't.
Um
And yeah,
Especially when you disagree with them on like an entirely different thing. Like, this person has a terrible hairdo, so I think I'm gonna be listening to some Nazis.
um, you'd written Friday about how the anti-abortion crowd, the forced birth crowd, really was pissed that they could no longer that people were like AP was like, wait a minute, maybe we should not
Like,
help
use the
promote your
propaganda
propaganda
terms.
of pro-life when send Christmas cards with your 8-year-old holding a AK-47. Maybe you're not as pro-life as you say, and so maybe we're just going to say this issue is specifically abortion rights and
Anti and
anti-abortion. Those are
like, this is the thing,
particularly
at
what it
least
is.
we understand that, like, we know that pro-choice is technically a propaganda term.
Mhm.
Like, that is what it is. It was, and it's framed correctly, like, to a certain degree. I mean, unless you consider the fact that even when abortion is legal, not everyone has access to that choice. It is still like pro-choosing whether or not you want to have a baby. We are in favor of that. Um, we understand that it's a propaganda term. We're not like, no, why are you taking our propaganda term away? Like, yes, abortion rights makes more sense. I actually use that more myself in general. Or abortion access rights, rather. And they were like, this doesn't describe, we need it to be pro-life because of all the crisis pregnancy centers that exist where we trick people who are trying to have abortions into not having abortions by telling them that, oh, you've got tons of time to have an abortion, so just don't. And that is really our commitment to pro-lifing and whatnot. And so they were mad about that. They were mad about late-term abortion, which does not describe accurately what happens. Because it's late term is like 41 weeks. A late term abortion is going to be more like 22, 23 weeks at,
Mhm.
those are, you know, like half of the other. And they're mad about that because they don't understand how words work. And then they are also mad about referring, instead of calling it a fetal heartbeat, when it's not, and referring it to as cardiac activity or fetal cardiac pole activity, which is the correct terminology.
Oh, yeah.
And they're very upset about that because what they want is like they create these terms that are supposed to make people feel a certain way, which is what
Yeah.
propaganda is.
Well, I mean, even Dr. Frankenstein, like if you watch Bride of Frankenstein's shot where he's monitoring a heart and it's beeping and it's like, is it alive? It's like, well, no, this is a miracle of life. This heart actually isn't. So even Dr. Frankenstein understood that there's difference between cardiac activity and literal life that we should recognize as actual sentient life yet. But I mean, they're appealing to sort of emotions and so forth, even amongst people who, hate
And they think
everyone
that's
who's
like a pro
actually alive.
science thing. They think their terms that appeal to emotions are, the real terms for things. And I think that's less because they're insidious and more because they are stupid. Like I don't like I do think that they are stupid enough to think like, no, that's the real scientific term for not liking abortion. Or it's a heartbeat. Like
You want to
they're just such
baby killers.
doofuses.
Baby killers. Yeah, so they haven't really thought that all through. Um,
No,
so
no.
when Warnock beat Walker, it was by a close to 3 points, and they were talking about the I'd seen where they were listing the closest races of the midterm, and of course Florida was not listed there because Marco Rubio, the kind of empty bag of
Air.
wind. Yeah. Like it was like by 18 or something points. It was just like up and I think that's what happens, right? That people were very disappointed that Warnock only won by 3 points because Walker's so terrible, whereas Val Demings, which is for many Democrats the ideal Democrat, was got crushed. Now, the problem, you could look at that and be like, well, maybe that wasn't an ideal Democrat. Maybe Walker does not suck in the way you think he sucks. Like I had friends, a good friend of mine from college is on the ground, was an activist in Georgia. And for a while, but when there was just talk of Walker entering, there was fear because he was very popular and he was, college football is like religion in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
It's very popular and there was concern there. But what I find a little, I actually get somewhat more offended as a Black person when often certain white liberals will respond to Walker as if he is like uniquely stupid when he is sort of like, well, a lot of what he said, like, have you listened to Trump or W. Bush or something? Like, he is like, he's not,
No, he's on par with them for sure.
yeah, like, and I do think there's a sense of when we talk about can't put sentences together, can't put things together, Democrats run the risk of being like,
It
okay,
doesn't
well,
come across well.
it just comes across as elitist and like, what's your issue? One, it has a rural accent. That's pretty bad.
Mhm.
And not, racist and classist. So it's your issues with his accent, or is it with like, yes, what he says is stupid and terrible, but also it's inherently dumb. Like, and I think have alluded to this as well. There's a sense of sometimes, oh, well, this Republican, the good Republican, has this really Sorkin style written way
And
of
his
saying that
newscastery.
way of saying that ultimately trans people are icky. But
Yeah.
that's ultimately what they got to. Whereas Walker comes out and says trans people be icky. Okay, well, how is that dumb? Like I think the message is being conveyed,
Yeah.
right? Like, you
They're
could
all
try to.
saying the exact same thing. Maybe not necessarily about werewolves. I'm sorry.
I mean, I feel bad because
But they all have
I
their own
feel like
werewolves.
hasn't there been moments of our chats that have devolved into a werewolf vampire?
Yeah. Well,
Especially
obviously, because
involving a musical. But I mean, it was so much strange. It's just like I felt like I watched the video. I was like, yes, it's arranged, but he's saying like, if you were watching TV, and you got like I was almost from a stand up comedy sense. I was getting what he was saying. Like, I can't. I'm too tired to get up and change the channel. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. Werewolves are more powerful than vampires. Yeah, good. But it was, of course, absurd and not
which
relevant
is
to
very
any.
confusing. You know,
Also, because
vampires are anti-Italian discrimination, sir.
yes, I mean, I always
Garlic, no mirrors. Are you kidding me? Garlic,
yeah.
no mirrors. I'd be lost.
I think there's an often movies where like, wait a minute, like why garlic? Like,
Yes,
it's like it
because they
seems
hate
like
Italians. Andy Warhol actually, although Andy Warhol set his, have you ever seen Andy Warhol's Dracula? We're towards the end of the
oh
thing.
yeah,
Have you
yes,
seen it?
oh
Okay.
yeah,
Andy Warhol's Dracula, which is the funniest goddamn thing I've ever seen, stars Udo Kier, who I love, and I am sure Steven loves as well because we like the same people. As a vampire who travels to Italy and thinking like, oh, there's a lot of Catholics here, probably a lot of virgins because there weren't any virgins left in Transylvania. And so he goes there and he's all like, oh, I'm just gonna like drink, sorry, not bang, uh, drink from all these ladies. And then he keeps getting sick and being like, because it's not virgin blood, he says virgin blood, because they were all shipping the farm boy. But also my question was like, there are probably also a lot of crosses there, Mr. Vampire, but apparently Andy Warhol did not think of that.
no,
So
that
it was
of the
also a very porny movie to see as a teenager.
Queen Elizabeth, the late Queen Elizabeth, hated garlic. So that was
Probably a vampire. No.
it was never served. Yes, that would be the twist. The movie like
Yeah.
that. It's that she's a vampire, and that is why no one's ever allowed to bring in. Of course, there's tons of crosses and stuff like that, but it's really ultimately they only mention the cross to distract you from the garlic. Garlic was really gets them, but
Yep.
King Charles apparently is a big fan of Italian food. So now,
Not a
if,
vampire.
if you have occasion to dine with the king, which is bound to come up,
Yeah.
Robin, you'll have some very good risotto. So that's
Wait,
maybe a
the
ragu.
real lesson here is that people who don't season their food are vampires.
Yes, not like garlic, not like really seasoned spicy food or seasoned food.
Yes.
Bland food was the
Mhm.
key. It is. I would not want to live to 97 if it no garlic or like bland food. I'm a
No,
big
that's
fan of.
no, that's why they always say like there's the like whole like weird town of people in Italy who like live to a million years because they drink a lot of wine and have garlic and cheese and carbs and family. I don't know. It's like there's an article on it like every 2 years.
I
Like the
I
town where no one dies,
I could not. I'm a big fan.
not because they're vampires.
I'm a big fan of garlic. I to the point where I apparently violate Italian custom and put a lot of garlic when I make a bolognese sauce. Apparently, someone says that
Oh
the
yeah,
not
technically you're not supposed to,
garlic.
but I put it. Whatever. We don't have any like this is the thing, like there really aren't that many rules. We just kind of like pretend like there are. Like there are rules, but like it's not like half of our food is just like pantry pasta, really. It's like someone couldn't figure out what the hell to make for dinner. Nah, let's just throw some shit together. And now it's a, whole thing. Like really. Like what do you think carbonara is? Carbonara is like I have literally zero ingredients. Gonna make pasta that is basically a breakfast sandwich.
But don't you? But like, you've got to be a chemist. Like, it was a chemist who did that, right? Like the idea that you cook like this, the heat will cook the egg or something. The residual heat will cook the egg.
I think so. I'm not gonna
That's like,
just run out of food.
what? That's a lot of. Otherwise, I'm just throwing an egg in. It's like, well, this is not going to work, right? Is there some like sort of they thought about it just seems like an innate awareness of how food will work, or even like the idea of how pasta
Well,
water
yeah,
makes.
there's skill.
Yeah,
There's skill involved. There's just not like as many rules as people who aren't actually Italian think there are. And those people are usually like the authenticity police. Like anytime, yeah, like
no.
they love to tell me how much they love authentic Italian food, and I'm like, that's weird. I don't
That is no, there is no such
like,
thing.
like we're just making shit up.
So, well, I think we're. Thank you so much for
Yes.
joining me early for my pre-holiday, and then I guess uh, we will see what you wind up working on this weekend and what will appear in Monday's thing. Once again, ask everyone to like, share, subscribe, and give a little. It's a Christmas
Yeah.
time. There's no more midterms. Give a little to Wonkette. Do the whole. In this scenario, Rebecca is George Bailey, and you're coming in with all the money, and
Yeah.
maybe
Just throw money at us.
I joke with
Make it
Doc.
rain.
I joke with Doc that he is the Uncle Billy in the scenario who gave away all Wonkette's money to Mr. Potter because he's senile. But we have a problem. we we kid. We love each other though. But anyway, anyway, thank you. See
All
you.
right.
Bye bye.
Good night.